So ESPN revealed their top 10 players for the upcoming NBA season. And looking at the top 10, we've got LeBron James at 1, Anthony Davis at 2, Giannis at 3, Luka Doncic at 4, Kawhi at 5, Kevin Durant at 6, Damian Lillard at 7, Steph Curry at 8, James Harden 9, and Nikola Jokic at 10. And I mean, it's hard to argue that these are the top 10 players in basketball right now. But I do feel that there is some consideration that does need to be looked at for the order. LeBron James and Anthony Davis 1 and 2. I mean, that isn't something that is too hard to argue about, considering the fact that these were the two best players when we went into the bubble, and they were the team that won the NBA title at the end of the year. So I wouldn't say that that's something too hard to argue about. Meanwhile, Giannis in third, the back-to-back MVP, while he has done well during the regular season, he has faltered in the playoffs. But with the form that he does show in the regular season, it is hard to put him any lower than third. Probably second in other people's eyes, next to Anthony Davis. Luka's a surprise at 4 for a lot of people, but for me, I think it's rightly deserved. I mean, he went on a tear during the playoffs in his first year, making it to the postseason, averaging about 30 points, 10 rebounds and 10 assists, and taking it to the LA Clippers, which were full of superstars, when himself was injured and his co-mate in Kristaps Porzingis was injured as well. He wasn't able to perform to the best of his abilities, and even then he was able to take it to the favourites in a lot of people's eyes. And in my personal opinion, if they did have a healthy team with Porzingis, they probably would have been the team that would have jumped them in the first round instead of the Denver Nuggets, who made the Clippers blow a 3-1 lead in those NBA playoffs. Meanwhile, in fifth place, you have Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is a difficult one to think about when you think about the fact that while he has performed well in the playoffs with the Raptors, we haven't really seen him perform well in a full postseason or a full regular season, especially for the fact that when Kawhi is a player who's taken load management really seriously, and we haven't even seen him play anything higher than 60 to 70 games in the last few years, I feel that is a big disadvantage towards him and towards the fact that he's rated that high, especially for the fact that while he did win a title with the Toronto Raptors, the last time that he really performed on an existential basis as a dominant number one option was the season that he played the Golden State Warriors, and he hurt his ankle in the first game of Game 1 in Oakland. So while I do think that he is a good player, I definitely would have Steph and Kevin Durant ahead of him in those rankings. And speaking on that, I think having Damian Lillard higher than Steph Curry, I think is a bit disrespectful, mainly for the fact that Steph is a 2-time MVP, and other than LeBron and KD, arguably is the best player of the current generation that we've seen in the NBA. For me, it's got to be Kevin Durant at 5 and Steph at 6. And even with those two, it is a bit more interchangeable, especially for the fact that even before Kevin Durant came to Golden State, Steph was the number one option who did win multiple MVPs and did lead his team to championships. So I mean, something about that, it just seems, I wouldn't say a bit weird, but a bit recency bias in that sort of way that people haven't overrated Dame, but they've seen him as a player who can take his team to a high level, but he hasn't taken their team to a championship level, even for the fact that when both Dame and Steph have met in the NBA playoffs, Steph has massively overperformed Dame and made him look like he was a player who wasn't on his level. So I mean, Steph definitely is on his revenge tour, and I think that he is going to prove quite a few people wrong who have listed him quite that low on the list. Meanwhile, when you have players like Jokic and Harden, to be fair, I think I would even have Harden maybe number 10, and I may have Jokic as high as number 7, especially for the fact that Jokic is an all-round player who does contribute to winning basketball, with the fact that he rebounds so well. He is a great passer out of the post, and he is a great facilitator for everyone in his team. And I mean, we saw that in the LA Clippers series when he just took over and was the best person on the court for the whole game and for the whole series. and really took it to them with the help of him and Jamal Murray, who's a great number two besides him. Harden, on the other hand, we know what's been going on with him and Houston. And while Harden does put up great numbers, generational numbers, unlike someone like Jokic or someone like Steph, he hasn't really contributed to a winning team. And at the end of the day, most of the points that he does put up, to put it simply, is empty calories, if you get where I'm coming from. So I wouldn't really say that Harden, while he is a great scorer and a great player per se, rating him on a level where he's one of the best and one of the players that contributes to a winning culture, for me, it just doesn't seem right, in the sort of sense that I wouldn't have him above Jokic, especially for the fact that if he was the number one option on my team, you have to play straight through him. And with the sort of ISO style that Harden plays, it is a bit more difficult to get other players involved and to get other players to perform to the best of their abilities, in a way that, how can they be active contributors who are going to improve and maybe score 20 points a game or 23 or 24, when you look at the fact that when he did have someone like Dwight Howard, he clashed and they left. When he had someone like Chris Paul, they clashed and they left. When he had someone like Westbrook, they clashed and they left. So Harden, I'm not exactly a big fan of him, to be honest. Looking at players that were in the inside that could have been in, though, players like Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, those are all players who I feel that if they would have had better postseasons, or if they would have had better seasons in general last year, they may have been players who would have been able to have snuck into this and would have been able to maybe give these guys a run for their money in terms of that sort of thing. But that's just where it is. I feel like those players, I mean, most of them really did deserve it, to be honest, and most of them really did just do what they had to do to keep it running, I guess. But like and subscribe, follow me on the Medges Culture Podcast on Spotify, subscribe to on YouTube, share and like, and follow me on socials below.